Okay.
Namaskar. This story is took place in 1979. I was a brahmachari in Istanbul, and it was a good-sized unit, very active unit, a lot of Margis, and we heard that Baba was coming around the world. He had just gotten out of jail the year before, and we heard that he was coming to Istanbul. So the Margis were very excited. They very active in getting everything ready. We only had a couple weeks to get everything perfect, and the food, the place, sleeping place. That we didn't have an attached bathroom in our Jagrati, so we had to arrange some curtains and so forth, and so then. A few days before he was supposed to come, we got a telex saying that Baba was not coming to Istanbul, and all WTs must reach Haifa for DMC. So the Margis were very disappointed, weeping. And some of them were weeping, and but I managed to go. Uh, Somehow I got it together, and I arrived late there in Haifa. And so I went to the Jagrati, and Jagrati was all locked up. Everyone was gone. There were no cell phones in those days. It's not that long ago, but I had no phone numbers. So I didn't know how to find where the convention was, where the DMC was going to be held, and so I just got on a city bus and started riding around the city, looking for some convention, what to do. So I had a very spiritual experience in this at least 2 hours doing this, and riding on the bus, looking and weeping because here I was in the same city with my guru and I couldn't find him, and this very strong yearning, spiritual desire to see him, and then I remembered that there was one Margi who lived in a kibbutz outside of Haifa, and so I went there, and his place was all locked up. Of course, he was gone, and so some people were walking by, and I asked them if they knew where Wally was, and they said, "Oh, Wally, he went in to see some Baba or something," and they gave me the address of where it was. So I went in immediately, and I reached just before the DMC speech, and sat down right in front of Baba. He was sitting up about this high, not very high, and he looked down at me, and gave his talk. And the next morning, we all flew to Istanbul. He had changed his mind. I guess he just really wanted to see how badly the Margis wanted him to come. So we arrived in the airport, and there was Shankar, a Turkish Margi, a mechanical engineer, doing tandava in his green and brown shorts. And Baba stayed in our Jagrati for 3-4 days. But I realized later that if I had not, if I had known the address when I arrived in Haifa and gone straight to the DMC site, I wouldn't have had this experience, this deep yearning experience. And years later, I realized that when he looked down at me, he had been with me on that trip on the bus. He had been there in those people who told me the address, but I hadn't realized it. And so it was a very spiritual experience. And then he stayed for 3 or 4 days in our Jagrati and gave Dharma Shastras every morning, evening. And I remember one Dharma Shastra was, he was talking. There must have been not more than 15 people there. And he was talking about something, talking about shaitan. And I thought, oh, he must mean Satan. And immediately he stopped and said, in English, Satan. Okay. And 20 years later, I was 20 years later, which would have been 99, almost 10 years after he left his body, I was sitting in the Copenhagen Jaga after Dharmachakra, and I decided to look through the Ananda Vachanatram. And I came to one article, Yoga and Mysticism in Istanbul. Oh, huh. I'll read it. See, I've forgotten what he said. So I was reading through it, and it said Baba was talking about shaitan. And then he stopped suddenly in his discourse, and he turned to one boy in the audience and said, in English, Satan. Now what is that? I mean, he left his body 10 years before. But still he could put in my mind the thought to look in Ananda Vachanatram and to come to that very page, Yoga and Mysticism, and to read it. It's a very special relationship we're cultivating with Baba. These songs that he gave, Prabhat Sangeet, they're all so touching, and I was fortunate to be there in India in December 1982, and he started giving these songs in September of 82. And they had never been sung in a large gathering before. So there we were, the DMC, and 20,000 people. And Baba was sitting up high, and there was a small group of sisters down here singing the new songs. And no one else was singing. Everyone was silent. And suddenly Baba jumped out of his chair like a tiger and said, "Sing, you stupids! Did you come here to listen?" Wow, such force, such dynamism, to tell 20,000 people that they're stupid. Yeah, that was truly amazing. And I've come to realize that through singing these, that he gave these songs for us, and so he wanted us to sing them. Each one of them is like from your own heart, speaking to the Lord. One of them sticks in my mind. Tumi amar koto upon age bujini. It means, I didn't understand before how close you are to me. So the discipline of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and singing Prabhat Sangeet, the discipline, the 16 points, the discipline of taking a bath every day, all of the things that we do, it's these things are creating a strength in us which will enable us to channel him and his vibration for the rest of humanity, as long as we are on the planet. And then others can take it up and carry on. So that's about it for me, I guess.
Thank you. I was gonna ask, what year was the Istanbul?
What, sorry?
What year was the Istanbul DMC?
It was 79.
Okay.
Istanbul DMC.
Okay.
Well, the one with 20,000 people, that was in India.
Okay.
That was in 82.
Okay.
December 82. It was 79. This is it, the photo. Baba was there, and
That's a nice photo.
This photo was taken by Shankar, the engineer who was doing Tandava in the airport, and he gave me a copy.
Nice. What was the? Can I ask some questions? Like,
Sure.
Or what was the mood like in Istanbul at that particular DMC? Or what was going on in the organization at that time in terms of,
Well,
I guess?
um, Baba, as I mentioned, Baba came out of the prison in '78, in August of '78, and he gave 16 points before he went into prison, and while he was in prison from '71 to '78. The teachings of Ananda Marga, it spread around the world like wildfire. And when he came out, there were Jagris all over the earth. And so there was a lot of strong enthusiasm. I left the U.S. in '77, so I wasn't here really. But before that, between '71 and '77, there was tremendous strength here in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. There were so many hippies, who got into the movement. We'd have retreats here, and we'd have like 300, 400 people at retreats in the Bay Area. But as soon as they learned that there was some discipline involved, many just fled. So there was a strong ideation, a strong feeling to spread his teachings and to anyone who was awake.
Did you ever go to the tiger's grave? I asked just because when I read the stories, I'm always very struck by the tiger's grave.
Oh.
And so I was wondering if you ever had the opportunity to meditate there or to...
I did go there once. That was in I forget what time, that was probably in '82 or '83. I did go there. It's it was. To tell you the truth, I didn't really feel any great vibration. It was just a Death Valley. I mean, it was just a grave, and a monument that he sat. It's when I saw Baba in the prison. I saw him in prison in '77 when I went to India the first time, and before I went, one old Margi, senior Margi, said, "If you ever get the chance, you should massage Baba's feet." And I thought, wow, okay, so here I was in the jail cell with Baba. And so I asked him, "Baba, I have a desire to massage your feet." And he said, "Then let your desire be fulfilled." So I massaged his feet. And to tell you the truth, it just felt like massaging someone's feet, I mean, I was pretty dense in those days. I still am. But my understanding has grown as to who he was and who he is, and my relationship with him. That he is, when I heard that he had left his body, it was like, wow. I didn't feel that I had lost anything, but I felt that he was with me, It's the first time I went into the prison cell, I went in and he talked, and he'd been fasting for 8 years, 7 years. And he said many things, and it was time for me to go. And the guard was motioning, I have to leave now, my time is up. And a thought went through my head, when I leave here, if someone asks me what he said, what will I say? So I got up and was backing out, doing namaskar. And he said, wait, come back here. Kneel down. And he leaned up on his cot and he said, when you leave here today, if someone asks you what I said, then you tell them this. And he repeated 3 times, very slowly, very slowly, let all my loving children be loved by all good people of the universe. I don't want that they should be loved by bad people. And I didn't forget it. But apparently he was talking about the moralists and the immoralists, you know. So I went to the training center in Benares and finished there, then went to Calcutta and finished the training, and Pranavanandaji gave me $50 and sent me to my first posting in Sri Lanka. $50 and said, go. So I took a train down to Rameshwaram. That's the tip of India. That's the place where the boat goes to Sri Lanka. And by then my $50, there wasn't much left. But I arrived at Sri Lanka and they wouldn't let me in because I didn't have enough money. Sent me back. And so I contacted my mother here in the U.S. What else to do, you know? And asked her to send my tax return from the previous year. Okay. And, well, she did, and it got lost in the banks somehow. And so I was there in South India for a month and a half with no money. And it was perfect because I met a nice, of course, this was all being arranged, right? Met a nice Indian family. They had a hotel and a restaurant just across the street. And they said, well, okay, we understand. You can stay here until your money comes and you can eat in our restaurant. And so I did, and it was a perfect introduction to Indian culture and food habits in South India. And eventually the money came. And so I proceeded into Sri Lanka, was there for 3 months. And then through some strange coincidences, I was deported from there because I had overstayed my visa. Ended up, so I went back into India. I got a ticket to Bangladesh. I had been deported from India. This was the days when Ananda Marga was not well looked upon by the Indian government. I'd been deported from India, so I couldn't re-enter India. But now I had a ticket from Colombo, capital of Sri Lanka, to Dhaka, with a stop in Madras, or Chennai now, and Kolkata, and then on to Dhaka. So that means an internal flight in India. So I arrived in the Madras airport, and shortly after, I was surrounded by soldiers with guns, and they said, "Oh, we've got him, you know." And, okay, and so they sent an unarmed escort with me on the plane to Calcutta to make sure I got on the plane to Dhaka, and arrived in Dhaka then. And I met one Dada there, who I had been in training with, and he was from Mexico actually, and he was living underground There was fear in all the governments around the world, fear of Anandamarga at that time. It is, what is it, terrorist organization or something? And so he was living underground. So I went and stayed. I found out where he was, and I went and stayed with him. And a few nights later, in midnight, it was pouring rain, and we were arrested by the Bangladeshi intelligence community, and they took us, held us, wanted to interrogating us, wanting to find out about what an Andamarga was and this and our involvement. And after 2 weeks, they found there was really nothing that we had done or that they could do to us. So we were released. And by that time, I thought, well, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go back to America and get my my car and my apartment, my money, and so I flew back to London with a credit card I had been carrying through thick and thin, and it was eventually paid for also, and so there I was in London, and I found that Bob had come out of jail 2 days before that. Now I was in London, and there was a big retreat, and this was in 1978 now, and big retreat in northern Italy in a big castle. There were 500 Margis there from all over Europe, and so much enthusiasm, and I decided to that I had just it had been my ego talking, so I just decided to wait and get another posting, and I was posted as the regional secretary for Khartoum. That's the capital of Sudan, and it took some months. I waited in Copenhagen, and then finally ended up in Istanbul, and after a year living in Turkey, I traveled to Egypt and got a boat from Lake Nasser, on Lake Nasser, there in Aswan, it's called. That's the way the people have to travel from Sudan to Egypt and back and forth, the people who cannot afford to fly. And so I got the boat, and it was a huge flatboat, 300 people on the boat, and just simply a floating structure. We went out in the middle of Lake Nasser and joined up with another 300 people on another flatboat. And so for a day and a half, we went 600 people down the Lake Nasser. It was wonderful. The African people singing and chanting and eating their fool. The fool, it's the broad bean that's subsidized in Egypt. It's the cheapest and most nutritious food that you can eat. And finally arrived in Khartoum. And so the chapters unfold. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Great. Can you quickly also introduce yourself? Because in the beginning,
I'm sorry?
just introduce yourself, because we didn't get your name or anything like that.
My name is Dara Jagadishananda. I learned meditation here in Palo Alto in the San Francisco Bay Area in 1970, and left for India training in 77. And now I'm staying here at the place where about 4 miles from where I learned meditation in 50 some years ago. And carrying on. Thank you.
Okay.